Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and we have a classic sci-fi to talk about today. Search the Sky by Frederik Pohl. This is a 1950s interstellar travel sci-fi, and I wasn't originally going to read this book, but I kind of had to. It was there, and it was actually really enjoyable. So, with that being said, let's dive on in. Now, at the beginning of the book, we are introduced to our main character, Ross. His home planet is Halsey's planet. His job on the planet mostly deals with trade and manufacturing between other planets and his own. In this book, we stick very much to the laws of physics. You cannot go faster than the speed of light, so trade between planets isn't really possible. They get a group of maybe like 20 people, and they send them on their ships, and they know hundreds and hundreds of years later, generations past, these people dead and gone, and their children dead and gone, and their children finally arrives at the next planet to trade. It's kind of a strange process, but it's very important to the plot of this book. You see, a ship arrives, and it's missed 9 planets. 9 planets it was supposed to stop at before Halsey's planet. Ross's boss comes up and talks to Ross, and he's like, I need you to do me a favor. You want to get off this planet, you want to see what's out there, then you have to get out there. You see, even though I just said that this book sticks to laws of physics, you can't go faster than the speed of light, that's kind of a lie. In the first chapter, a ship is introduced this is a faster than light ship, but you can't use it that often because there are side effects to that. And the reason why these ships are kept secret is so there's no wars in between planets. But now that planets are starting to go off the map, they need to figure out what's going down. So that's kind of the main plot of this book. It's traveling different planets, figuring out why some planets have stopped responding, why some planets are starting to lose their population. I do have a bit of a problem with our main character. He is supposed to represent the classic sci-fi hero, but he's really not. He's annoying, he's stupid, he's smart, but he's stupid. He treats women very badly, and this actually comes up as a plot point in the book, which I do appreciate. They realize what's wrong with the main characters of these sci-fi stories, and they do something about it. But it's kind of like a Deadpool situation. You point out the failures, but you don't fix them. A lot of what this book focuses on is what happens to the human race when they're isolated. Any gamers out there know Fallout has also kind of dipped into that. What happens when people go isolated? They kind of don't come out the same. So if huge sections of the human race are removed from each other, can't even communicate through boats, what happens to them? So the planet that we start on, Halsey's planet, is very much structured like our own. It's economy-driven, it's trade-driven. There's a dwindling population, but things are holding steady. The readers realize that's not how it is, though, when Ross enters his first planet on his mission. This planet, its population and its ruling class are decided by age. And in fact, an age being just a number is very important to the structure of this planet. People's age can be counted backwards almost. You screw up, you have a year deducted from you. Even though you still age normally, your title as this, I'm 18, I'm 17, you can have that knocked back if you do something wrong, even though you're still physically the same age. This planet also has what I will best describe as a mock democracy. While Ross is there, they have the election day, and they wheel out old people, and they say, this guy is 138, this guy is 139, and this guy's 140. And everyone votes for 140 because the idea is you have the choice, and they tell you everyone's ages, and you choose who's the oldest. So naturally, everyone votes for the 140-year-old. That's their democracy. They don't have a choice because they all vote for the oldest. So on this planet, we are introduced to our second main character, Helena. She is the female companion to Ross, and like I said before, this is where some of the not nice to women thing come up. You see, Helena, while being a very stupid and annoying girl, she's actually a really good pilot for having no idea what a spaceship was before Ross introduced her to the one. So after Ross gets off this planet with Helena, she ends up taking over most of the takeoff and landing in between the planets. And Ross is just kind of there to complain about it, and he still calls her a stupid girl, but she shows that she's surprisingly capable. But she is also a huge reminder that things work differently on different planets, because every time they go to a new planet, Helena brings up the fact that the leaders aren't old. They aren't old people. They aren't senior citizens, and she gets really freaked out by that. So once they get off these old people planets, they go to the next planet, which, again, doesn't really have a name, but it's the planet where we find the character Bernie on. This planet is ruled strictly by women. Everything you think a feminist would love is taking that and bringing it to the extreme. And this book is a constant reminder that anything extreme is very bad. You want to keep things moderate. You want to keep things in the middle. And pushing things to one side or the other can cause situations like we find on Bernie's planet. This planet really discusses gender dominance and how it can affect people. It also kind of has a sort of parody almost to our planet, because whenever someone asks why a woman would be weaker than a man, they would give off a list. And when you go to Bernie's planet and ask why a woman is stronger than a man, they give off the same list. Of course they're stronger. They can bear children. Of course they're in charge of the money. The man has to make it, so they're the ones in charge of making sure the man doesn't spend it. It's a very nice change, but at the same time it does bring up some questions, which I do appreciate, especially considering that this is coming from a 50s point of view, back when women were only supposed to be housewives. Now overall, Bernie doesn't actually add anything to the plot. He doesn't really add anything to the story. He doesn't add anything to the character dynamics. Even with that being said, he is sort of useful on the next planet we get to, which is more than Helena was. So the next planet we get to is the Jones planet. Every person there is a Joan. Every person there is what we would consider a clone. You see, a while back on this planet, the Jones started popping up. And they were people looking identical to each other. And they started to take over the planet. There were some other normal people, people with diversity and stuff, but with the Jones slowly taking over, they were the one in charge. We don't really get to explore this planet too much because we're only stuck in this one location. It's really there to help them figure out what is going on, where is their next destination. Dr. Jones, the character that we are introduced to on this planet, helps them out and gets them all fixed up, and they get off the planet. This planet doesn't really do anything except introduce the character, who is immediately ignored in the very next one. He is immediately ignored and in fact isn't even a part of the final part of this story. So he was just introduced, put on the ship, and then he's gone. Why was he put on the ship anyways? Now, I do not want to discuss the final planet that they get to. There are no more characters added to the party at this point because this is the final planet and they go away after this. So that would be discussing a spoiler. Nothing too dramatic happens in the ending except for the most obvious, but that's simply the way it works. So Search the Sky is actually considered a satire to most sci-fi books. It has the typical tropes, but it makes fun of them. You take what you see in books like The Stainless Steel Rat, and it points out why this shouldn't work, why this is wrong. I really love satires. Like, they're great to come across when they're done correctly. But I'm kind of concerned this book didn't hold up as a satire. Really good satires, especially ones that I would highly recommend. There's this play called The Government Inspector. If you have a chance to go and see it, or even pick up the script, please do. It is... But this story doesn't really hold all of that. It makes fun of it, but it doesn't make fun of it. It was pitched as a comedy, and a lot of the reviews I was reading were saying this was incredibly funny, but I didn't really find anything funny about this. Sure, there were some comedic moments, but that was kind of it. What this book mostly was to me was a social commentary. Each one of these places, each one of these things, the gender dominance, the age dominance, just the idea of a single population taking over, these are social commentaries to what the was happening in a world back in the 1950s and even up until now. Now, excuse my pronunciation for the next couple words. I cannot seem to get this right, but bear with me, okay? This book was mostly based off the idea of Gulliver's Travels. This is the adventure, the sci-fi, the traveling from planet to planet. This was classic 1950s, and it was supposed to be making fun of it, but I didn't really get that until the end. And while I got the whole Gulliver's Travel thing, that was where it really was for me. This book is also very good at showing you what not to do when it comes to world building. And this falls into the social commentary thing. One planet is all about aid, and one planet is all about female dominance. That is a planet of hats. That is what not to do when it comes to sci-fi or fantasy. When creating a race of characters, you can't all make them happy-go-lucky characters. That's not how it works. No one's going to be exactly the same. And so I appreciate that when it comes to, this is a satire, but you have to realize that when you're reading it, that is meant to be the way it is. It's not really about world building, it's making fun of it. The pacing in this book was pretty slow, considering the fact they would race through space and then stop on this one planet for chapters and chapters and then go off again and then stop, and it seems like it wasn't progressing that much, especially considering the fact they're supposed to be figuring something out, and they weren't really figuring something out. They were collecting people and moving on. But it was pretty consistent pacing overall, especially considering the fact that they skipped the space travel part and just moved from one place to another. It felt very easygoing. It was a nice, slow read if you want to just sit down and enjoy a book. Overall, I give this book a 6 out of 10. It was a fine book, nothing incredibly special. This would most likely be because it was meant to be a comedy and I just didn't find anything funny about it. Maybe if you read it, you'll pick up something funny. I know there's an audiobook of this floating around YouTube. It was in the public domain, so don't worry about breaking any laws there. I did see it floating around when I was searching for reviews on this to figure out why exactly I wasn't getting some of the jokes. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any suggestions on what you want me to read next, leave them down in the comment section below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.